Hey everyone, Nathan Sweet with the Catholic American here. My first podcast from my office here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. It's under renovation, and I don't care. I'd rather show you the good, bad, and the ugly. Keep it real with you. I thought about this weekend a lot about, how I communicate what I want to do in this podcast. Why is it unique? Why is it needed in this space nowadays? And fundamentally, I think it's a story of who we are in the West. Who we are in the West as the Catholic Church, who we are in the West as the Christian Church, in general, and how we Americans got to where we are in the legal system, what it's built upon, and our culture. Everything combined that goes into that is not something that I think is talked about enough in the public square. We have these very surface level debates, whether we should provide healthcare, is healthcare right, whether we should be pro-life up to the point that the baby's born, or care about all human life and human life with our brothers and sisters after they're out of the womb. What do we do with women's rights, with LGBTQ rights? All of these things that we struggle with in our current political context that divides us. But the more important thing that we don't focus on, that has been subtly undermined in the West for decades now, is what it means to live in the West, what it means to be Western. I've been told I say that like I'm from West Virginia because my roots are there. And so my wife tells me all the time I don't say Western right. So it's ironic that this podcast is going to be about something that I have a weakness in saying. And that figures. That's just how life is for me. In my weakness, he is made strong. So hopefully that's true in this context. But what does it mean to be Western? And I don't mean by the old West, out West, which I love. I don't mean that. I mean, what does it mean to be part of this European Christian Catholic heritage that obviously came from other places like the Greeks and Judaism? What does it mean when we say we have rights? All of this stuff, no one talks about the underpinning, and maybe that's because it's boring, but fundamentally, it solves 90% of our disagreement if we can agree again on what it means, where we came from, what it means to be Western. That's the bulk of it, because believe it or not, throughout all of human history, people did not believe this. And we're at risk today in a post-Christian secularist society that will lose that. This isn't just, we're born into it in the society we live today, and we just assume and we take it for granted. But it's fundamental, and hopefully it'll help you see the value in your faith, and what, as we explore different denominations within Christianity and what that means. It's all connected. I thought about two different political statements as it pertains to rights. One is by a Democrat Catholic, and the other is by a Democrat Catholic. The first is by one of my political heroes in terms of his philosophy, and that's John F. Kennedy. And in his fantastic 1960 inaugural address that's so well known for, ask not what your country can do for you, he said something fundamental that he believed, and that Catholics and Democrats back then believed. He said, "The world is very different now, for man holds within his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human life and all forms of human poverty." And he says, "And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe." What was that? He says, the belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. That's Catholic John F. Kennedy, 1960. Now fast forward to what that's been perverted nowadays. Another Catholic senator, who I don't despise or anything like that, but just his worldview came out last week in a subcommittee hearing in the Senate, where Senator Tim Kaine, Catholic Democrat, he said in response to a religious person that had made some statements that rights come from God fundamentally, he said the notion that rights don't come from laws, but from the government, but from the Creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. So Tim Kaine is apparently a proponent of the idea that our rights fundamentally come from the government. They're not presupposed elsewhere. They're not natural. They're not inherent. And that should concern every single one of you. That should concern every single one of you on the entire political spectrum, whether you're an LGBTQ person or whether you're a religious person. Because your rights, if they come from the government, they can be taken from the government. And I don't just mean pragmatically, but I just mean morally. Because pragmatically, if we don't elect the right people and we don't all buy into a system, they can always be taken if we let them. But is it right to do so? Should we advocate that it even should be so? Like certain post-Christian philosophers have advocated. Back almost to this old idea that might makes right, and that our fundamental rights of all of us, left, right, center, come from the hand of God. That there is an original cause of these rights that our founding fathers believed. And John F. Kennedy recognized that. And apparently Tim Kaine does not, only sees it as a battle of religions. It's no secret that leftist professors, I hate to call it out, but it is what it is, far left professors have advocated the undermining and advocated an intentional undermining of the story of what it means to be a Western Christian person or a person in a Western legal society. And how they've done that. And they've done that through a focus intensely on wrongs, imperfections across hundreds of years in the West. That things just automatically, we didn't crawl out of paganism, out of all of human degradation, of all of human history, and its fallenness. We didn't do it overnight. So apparently that's enough to just stand on top of it and look down and criticize the entire system. We're talking about slavery. We're talking about women's rights. We're talking about a lot of rights that we hold dear today, and that didn't just happen, and mistakes got made during the development of this, and therefore they try to say it has no value. To distinguish, though, for all of human history, there was none of this. And I encourage you, get outside the noise if you were programmed by one of these leftist professors and just Google what it was like as a slave in Rome. What it was like as a woman in Rome, okay? As for a non-Roman citizen, how was their foreign policy? What was Rome's foreign policy like? Okay, it was brutal. For all of human history, it was brutal. So this idea, first and foremost, with the left was to rewrite history and make us all question, who are the good guys? Who's the good religion? Who's the good, what's the good, train of thought that leads us in this progressive revelation of what we should do and how we should live? And there's a second part of that, and there's probably a lot more than that I could talk about, but the second part of that is deconstruction. And what they do in these college campuses and what they do with these history classes is they deconstruct history. They don't want history told in a cohesive, understandable way that documents and shows the progression of the West towards liberalism, and I mean that not in today's right versus left, but towards the idea of human liberty, freedom. And that undermining, that deconstruction to take out elements of it. Well, what's women's history? What's LGBTQ history? What's African American studies. What's this and that? Okay, and break it down. Well, the story isn't told truthfully and honestly overall first, and it's only taught in some deconstructive way that tends to tell it from one lens or the other, and without a cohesive story being told. And the idea that a cohesive story can be told is like anathema to these people. These people think that they'd say to this, well, there's just the lie is that there could even be a cohesive story told. It's all history and truth is all in the eyes of the victor or the person saying it. So that's why we deconstruct it. Well, don't be surprised if you believe that nonsense, that your society is going to produce people who live their lives in a deconstructed manner, who can't see the overall value of living in a pluralistic liberal society where the rule of law, which is based on this progression, which happened, is respected and understood. So I don't think that this sleight of hand that these professors pull is unintentional. And we've lived with it, and there's a lot of apathy. I was the nerd that liked history as a kid, and in my class, even growing up, there's just so much apathy. There's like, why do we have to learn this? Even with my kids, there's discussions, right? This is boring. Why do we have to learn a bunch of stories? It's because it's essential. And once we understand this overall cohesive story and how we developed, we're going to better be able to make laws currently, to understand why the legal system is the way it is. And I'll say this too, for those of you on the left that just want to criticize this, because there's a lot of people on the left that criticize this, and people on the right tend to be very, very open to this, and they're the people who push it, rightfully so. People on the left, I want you to understand something. Catholics that may be left-leaning, this is essential to protecting human rights. This is essential to protecting the edifice upon which you advocate for women's rights, for all the rights of people that you are worried about genuinely. I know that there's so many people on the left that have a great heart, that do what they do and believe what they believe because they have compassion. And I'm telling you, if you throw the baby out with the bathwater and you have no basis for which to advocate for compassion for your fellow man. In fact, one of the things that I've seen personally with people on the right of late is I've seen this willingness to throw out these liberal rights that are protecting people. Because now that the Trump administration's in power and both houses are controlled in the Supreme Court by the Republicans, well, there's this idea that we need to take physical action against people on the left, that they're all bad. And to hell with, I've had people say this, to hell with the First Amendment, to hell with the Fourth Amendment, things that protect us all as a society. That's not where we need to be. We don't need a king, okay? A new king will not solve this problem. And this is why history needs to be told, and why you need to not just go with your pure, unbridled, blind, ignorant, unprincipled rage towards your fellow man when something bad happens, like has happened these last few weeks, and has really frankly happened for weeks and weeks upon weeks now, in different places, schools, and President Trump's assassination, Nancy Pelosi's husband, the poor lawmakers in Minnesota, this political violence, this unprincipled rage against the other person, and a refusal to work within the system, is a product of forgetting how you work within the system, and why it's important to hold this for both sides, for everyone in between, for our children in the future. So a king has been proposed, essentially, or some kind of strongman leader. That's what we always have run throughout human history. And this is part of retelling the story. We in the Catholic Church know that our history is long. It's been here for 2,000 years, and we've been down that road before. Almost all American Protestant churches haven't been around as long as our church went through persecution under an emperor kings in Rome, Diocletian and Nero. I mean, it's wild to think about how long the persecution went on in the Catholic Church before it was recognized in the West with Constantine. And our forebears did not result to political assassination. They did not result to violence. They did not result to hate. Christianity is fundamentally a religion of taking up your cross. And if you now don't know that, then you miss the whole point of Christianity. And so maybe you need to listen to the story as well to understand, well, why don't we just go shoot people that we don't like? Why don't we just, take matters into our own hands and go to war with our neighbor? And why don't we want a strong man that can promise to save us all? There's Julius Caesar. That's why the position was created, was for him to solve all the problem, and he'd give it right back up. Or our founding fathers and other Christians that lived through that and after that knew that that's not how it works. So what I'm proposing in this podcast is, instead of beating each other up, instead of shooting each other, instead of a king or an emperor in America, through whatever means that's accomplished, right or left, I am asking that we all do what King Josiah did in the Old Testament. And if you don't know the story of Josiah in the Old Testament, he's a young king, offspring of David, and Solomon comes to the throne at 8 years old. And around the age of 18 years into his reign, he basically orders that the temple be rebuilt or be refurbished and fixed. And basically they're in there, it's been so long since they practiced their faith that they've forgotten the law. And the high priest brings in the book of the law to Josiah, and he has it read. And he once again shares it with the people of Israel for repentance and to get back to what made them great. And he rents his clothes. He tears them out of disgust because he realizes how far off they are. So my hope is that this is a small way, as we build this and we have conversations with other people and we flesh this out, that you'll learn and grow with me, that we will once again rediscover the value of the law, of faith, what it means for all of us. Even if you're a person on the left that doesn't believe that there's much value for Christianity, I'd encourage you to go to Hitchens and see what he said lately as an atheist, that there's huge value in cultural Christianity, because even that is recognized. This is a prerequisite to a free and liberal society. You need faith and you need the rule of law. And we're going to talk a lot about that. King Josiah said, "I have found the book of the law in the temple of the Lord." And he read it out loud. And when he heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his robes and inquired of God. So some people may not like this story. I have a feeling it'll offend pretty much everybody at some point. I thought about naming it the most unpopular podcast in the world. And I expect that. But we don't have popularity as our primary concern as Christians and as believers. Our faith tells us that God's law is like a mirror into which we can look at ourselves and say, are we in the right? We don't try to change God's law. As Christians, as Catholics, we look into the law and let it adjust our behavior. And if we're angry at it, maybe we're the ones that need changing nowadays. So this is going to be the exploration of the story of who we are and how we got here. And I encourage you to join me. And as we move along, and I'm imperfect as a messenger as I may be, I hope I can share some stuff with you that gives you some thought. Wherever you are on the spectrum, this is for everyone. So cheers, peace be with you all. Have a great Monday.